Welcome to the week 2 of Microsoft Visual Basic 2017 for Windows Web and the Database course. And today, actually, we will be migrating to some actual coding exercises. So, let's give you a brief introduction before even we make a transition to the next slide. So, before a program can be coded using Visual Basic 2017, it must be designed. Designing a program can be compared to constructing a building. You know, before cement slabs are poured, steel beams are put in place, and walls are built. Architects and engineers must design a building to ensure it will perform as required and safe and reliable. The same holds true for a computer program or application. Once the program is designed, it can be implemented through the Visual Basic 2017 programming language to perform its intended functions. Now, in this class, actually, our main objectives are, first of all, to create a Visual Basic 2017 Windows desktop application project. Then name and set the title bar in the in a window form object and resize a window form object. Then we will be adding a level object to a windows form object. Name the level object, set the text in the level object, and change the font properties of the text in the level object. Finally, we will add a picture box object to the windows form object. uh, the picture box object, actually, it will contain some pictures. As we work on Visual Basic, you will see that our preliminary functionalities, the initial programming activities, will be focused on dragging and dropping components from the available component trees onto your application form. So we will be looking into that. Then we will be adding a button to the Windows form object. We will rename the button object because when you add a button, Visual Visual Basic will give a default name to the button. We will change the name to be more meaningful in respect of the requirement on which your application is built. Then you align objects on the Windows form object. Then we will save, close, and open Visual Basic projects. We will understand and implement design principles of the graphical user interface. We will also understand and implement the first two phases of the application development lifecycle. So, um, before we create any program, we need to design, right? I mean, designing a program is the first step. As I mentioned in the introduction part, before even we jumped into the slides, that it's like planning a building. So before you build a building, your architect plans for that, and then the builder builds the building according to that plan. So design is kind of planning phase for an application. Now, design and implement the application. We will be learning how do you design and implement the application to illustrate the process of creating a program as an integrated development environment using Visual Studio. I mean, our integrated development environment is the Visual Studio, and we will be coding it using Visual Basic. The application could be a part of a larger menu application used to select a coffee latte order at your favorite coffee shop. So we will be simulating a coffee shop. Our application will simply give you a screen that will be an imaginary coffee shop, and you will be able to choose different options and order. So it's not that we will be implementing every single functionalities associated with a coffee shop, but we will be focusing on a subset of those applications. So it will be like this. I mean, when you start your application, your your initial window. So using the Visual Studio, you will create a you will be creating a Windows form, .NET form. I'm going to show you later this in this lecture, a Windows .NET form, and there you will be modifying that form to get this type of look and feel. Then gradually we will be adding these pictures. Let's say, let's say we will be adding different selections, like you have here uh, two different flavors of coffee, pumpkin spice and mocha. So once the user comes here and that user selects pumpkin spice, this picture should be popping up. So this will be this step, that we will add this picture. This picture is available as a part of the book. We will be adding that picture, and I will make that available for you too, so that you can go over this same exercise as I'm illustrating here. So you will be able to add that picture here, and then once you click this picture, what happens next? So you could select mocha as well. So in that case, basically this picture, a different picture will be showing up on your um, application, on your Windows form. So once the mocha button is selected, you should be able to see the picture of mocha latte. And then after you choose whatever the user chooses, whatever option they want to go with, then they can select whatever they want. So let's say we select mocha, and then we do select latte. That means the mocha is selected, and then a some information will be popping up on your window. Enjoy your latte selection. That is the confirmation message, and then you will basically there will be an exit button popped up here. Showed that will be showed up here, and once if you click on the exit button, you will simply exit the window. This will be equivalent to closing the window using the cross sign above. Okay, so this is that simple application. Now um, let's dive a little deeper. We are using Visual Studio 2017. When we design an event driven program that uses a graphical user interface, or GUI, such as the program that we are going to do or we are going to discuss, illustrate in this chapter. So, one of the first steps after we define the purpose of the program is to design the user interface itself. you know. So before we start to design the user interface, the the programmer needs to know how to use Visual Studio and Visual Basic rapid application development tools in the design process. So this part we are discussing how do you create a new Visual Basic Windows desktop project. We are illustrating it here, but I will be showing you hands-on process using the actual Visual Studio. How do we create this? Wait, I mean, just go through this illustration first, and then we will go to the actual exercise. So within the Microsoft Visual Studio, when you create a project, what does that mean? A project is equivalent to a single program created using Visual Studio. So when you create a project, it will, I mean, your Visual Studio itself will offer you to create a project, and a project is a single code. It will be something like a module that you are going to create, and you will put all the structural, I mean the design, and also the code for doing different exercises on the form itself within that particular module. So we will be choosing a Windows classic desktop project, that is a program that includes a user interface whose windows are created using Windows operating system. And when you create the program, when you execute the program, the user of that program will be able to interact with the program by using its windows and components. So in the as a step 1 of this process, what you should do is that on your computer, if you are using a Windows 10 machine, you need to click the start button on the Windows taskbar. Then you should type Visual Studio and then click your Visual Studio program. In your case, it may be Visual Studio 2017 or 19. If you use the lab environment for ELAC, you will get Visual Studio 2019. It is okay to use that. Or if you choose to install your own community version, then it will be Visual Studio 2022, which is the latest and greatest version of the Visual Studio. So let's go to the next slide. So when you create a project, so basically you click the new project button on the standard toolbar. Now if you need, you could tap or click Windows Desktop in the left pane so that it is selected. If necessary, tap or click Windows Form application in the middle pane. Type the project name and tap and click OK button in the new project window. So here comes your uh, layout after you create a new project. So this will show up on your Visual Studio as soon as you create your new project. As you can see here, you will this is the Visual Studio um, window, and you will see that this form 1.vb shown as design. This is the visual representation of the Visual Basic code, and you will see that this one is the design. Then you will have some toolbox button here. Then you have the title bar form 1, that is the default name of the Windows form, and the main window is that Windows form object. You will have close button, you will have maximize button, you will have minimize button as well. Okay, so project name is also mentioned in the title bar of the Visual Studio. So that will be the layout of your Visual Studio once you create the project. So let's move on. So the Visual Studio window will contain several important features that you need to know. First, the portion of the window known as the work area. So here, basically, this is the work area. So this portion, this is a tabbed page named form1.vb design. This contains a Windows form object called form1. So this form1 is the default name whenever you create a Windows form project. A Windows form object is the window you will use to build the program. So this form 1. This will be basically the window that you will see. This is the representation of the real application. This is not the real form that will be showing up when the user will execute the program. This is the form for you to add the design and add the component and bind the components with necessary code for your workflow. So then the next task is you have to click on the toolbar. So once you click on toolbar, you will see different toolbars, different options with the toolbars to be showing up on your Visual Studio, I mean on your project, and you will see that you will be using the command controls. So your common control tab, and you will find that your Windows form object is getting hidden. We will talk about it how you can unhide that one, and you will see that there are a lot of .NET components that we are using. These are date time picker, picture box, web browser. These are the .NET components used in this application. Is it okay? In order to display the toolbox permanently, what you should do is that you should click on this pin here. There is a pin. So in the previous picture, this thing is taking over the space so that the form is hidden. So here is a small pin here, you know, in the under on the toolbox there is a small pin, auto hide button. This small pin, when you click it, you will basically make this toolbar permanent and your form 1 will be visible. So form 1 is moved to right. Okay, so toolbox displayed at all times when you do click on this pin. So this icon is called push pin icon. Okay, so this is your Visual Studio, and then you created a project called pizza selection. That project has generated default form, Windows form, and your form name is form 1, and we are trying to explore the options for us so that we can start integrating different components onto this form. And in that pathway actually we are dragging and dropping, we will see that we will be dragging and dropping different uh, common controls onto this form, and we will do lot of changes to that form. So this is just a start. Now another thing is important, which is viewing the object properties. So how do you do that? The properties can describe different characteristics about the object. So we'll see it in a moment. Like for example, when you, let us say you have a button object here, you drag it down to the form, and then the properties of that button objects, you will see a separate pane where the properties of the button objects will be displayed. So we are talking about that. In the properties window, the property names in the left list appear in alphabetical view. Many developers find the alphabetical view the easiest to use when searching for the properties. So it will be something like this, you know. So on the right hand side of your Visual Studio win- entire Visual Studio window, you will see the properties toolbox, the properties pane, where everything like properties are categorized by different category like accessibility, appearance, behavior, data, many things. So you will see, I mean, this is the properties window. You can see here, if you want to sort the buttons alphabetically, you need to click on the second icon, and then you will find all the properties for different objects here. Okay, so next step would be naming the Windows form object. So we created a Windows form here, right? Form 1. So form 1 is the name which is given to this object by default. So what we should do, we should tap or click anywhere in the window form object to select it, and next we will go to the properties window, and on the properties window we will find the we will be renaming the form, but before that we need to go to the Solution Explorer, which is similar to, they don't show it here. You will see on the right hand side a Solution Explorer, this one basically. So this is the project and this is the Solution Explorer. What you will do there is that you will right click on the name form.bb, form1.bb, and name it according to your project. You can rename it to latte selection.bb, for example. So in this particular case you could type form latte selection.bb and press the enter button. So you are going to change the name in this way. That's the illustration of how do we do that. So you right click here and make the name as you want. Next, the title bar text in the Windows form object. So what was the title bar name? Form 1, right? So the text property in the properties windows for the Windows form object contains the value displayed in the title bar of the window. What you should do is that you should click the Windows form object and then scroll in the properties window as needed until you find the text property. Then double click the text property in the right column, and then you can simply type latte selection and then press the enter key. So this will be something like this. Okay, so you find the text. This is the properties window. You find the text and then you simply double click on the right hand pane. Initially it would be form 1, so you change it to latte selection and then enter to reflect that change on your form. You could resize a form. It's the simplest one. So there are a couple ways to do that. Number one is you could see the actual size in the property window. You know, the other option is just drag and drop. Just drag across the corner or across the line, length or width or across the corner. Or you could do it manually, like type 730 700 and then press the enter key. The next step in this process is to add a label object. So what you have to do is that you need to drag the label .NET component from the Common Controls tab in the toolbox over the Windows form object to the approximate location where you want to place the label object. When the label object is in the correct location, you need to release the left mouse button. So here, for example, you have this label object here. Okay, this label object is dragged to here. The dotted border will indicate that label object is selected. The label object with default text label 1 on Windows form object. Label 1 object with this will be basically label object with default text label 1 on Windows form object. So you can change the name of the label object. With the label object selected, scroll in the properties. Again, you have to refer to the properties windows until you find the name property. Then double tap or double click the name property in the right column. Type the new name and then press the enter key. So that will be it. Now this is like this is illustrated in this picture. So you select the label 1, then go to the properties. You will find the name. You change the name to a different name, whatever you want. So also there is another thing which is important. You are not going to display it as level 1, right? You need to do some meaningful name for your project. Let's say mocha coffee selection application, something like that. So for that purpose, actually, you need to scroll in the properties window until you find the text property, then double tap or double click the text property in the right column. So in this slide, we are describing the change the text in a label object. So when you select the label object, you scroll in the properties window until you find the text property. At that point, you double tap or double click on the text property in the right column, and that will give you the opportunity to enter the new text. You type the new text and enter. So that process is here. So you select the label object. Okay, you go to the properties here and find the text, change the properties, enter, and that will be reflected here. So you could enter multiple lines of text in the level as well. That is done by clicking the arrow here, and that will create a text box. Then you can enter multiple lines of text here. You could change the label font style and font size. What you have to do is simply tap or click the label object for selecting that. Then you should scroll until you find the font property in the properties window. Font property in the properties window. Tap or click the font property in the left column of the properties window. Tap or click the ellipsis button for the font property, and in the font dialog box you have to choose the font. So the whole process is shown in illustrated in this picture actually. So what you should do here, you select the label, go find font, and then you click on the font right hand side. That will give you a lookup for different fonts, type, style, everything, size. You select those, and you can do that there. The another important topic is to center a label object in the Windows form object. So with the label object selected, tap or click format on the menu bar and then point to the center in form on the format menu. Tap or click horizontally on the center of the form menu. So it will be like this. So what you have to do is there will be a format button. So let's see if I can find you the Visual Studio here. There is a format here. So you need to click on the format, and then you should point to the center in the form. That's an option, center in form, on the format menu. So you have to choose whether horizontally or vertically. So you are choosing it horizontally, and that's it. So that will make it like that. If you want to delete GUI object, select the object in the window form and press the delete key. And also you could use the undo button on the standard toolbar as well. Now you could add a picture box object. So picture box is a menu item. So you have to locate it with the toolbox. So this is a .NET component and you have to drag the picture box on the toolbox over the Windows form where you want to picture box object to be displayed. When the pointer is in the correct location, you need to release the left mouse button. Okay, so it will be like that. So you will have to locate picture box from here, drag it to the form object, and then you have to put it there. So in order to name the picture box object, you have to select that object same way as the other object. Select, go to properties, locate the parenthesis name property in the properties window, double double tap or double click the value in the right column, type the name and then press enter key. That is it. So if you want to resize the picture box, you have two options. Number one, change it here under the property type. Number two is to drag those dots. So then we need to add a second picture box, right? So we do the same thing as the first picture box. Now you have to make the picture box of the same size. So it's done very simply. You need to make sure the sizes are the same from the properties window. So if they are not same, then you have to simply type it there. Okay. Then you have to align. So with the left and right picture box object selected, tap and click format on the menu bar and then point to align the format menu. Tap or click bottoms on the align submenu. So now next we need to add a button object. So it's the same as like we did not add any button, right? So again, you have to go to the toolbox. So button is also a .NET object. You need to drag and drop it on the menu, on the form. Then you have to place that properly, and then you can change the text of the button object by clicking it, and then go to the properties window, change the property. So that's the same for any button. So next task will be to add a second button, because as you remember, first one is for pumpkin spice and second one is for mocha. So we will have to add it. So like this. So you have to align the objects vertically. If you need, I mean, you could do it vertically as well. I mean, in this slide, this is horizontal alignment, but you could do it vertically, placing just vertically here. You could do that as well. So in that case, you have to do in this way. And again, I mean, whenever you want to accomplish some alignment, you have to click on the format and then choose whatever option you want. Now at that point, you need to close the Visual Studio. So in order to close the Visual Studio, you can tap or click the close button. So you could, there are a couple options to open the Visual Studio project. Double click on the solution file. I mean, locate it on your Windows desktop or Windows, I mean, your folder, File Explorer. Go to the folder where you have the SLN or solution file, double click, or you open the Visual Studio and then open the file button and then locate the solution file and open it. There is even a method 3. With Visual Studio open, click the file on the menu bar and then point to the recent projects and solutions on the file menu. Tap or click the name of the project you want to open. So what we did here, we developed some simple Windows form, but then whatever we have done can be referred back to the development life cycle of the program, right? So you need to set the phases. So first, gather and analyze the program requirement. There's the requirement phases. You can design the user interface, design the program processing objects, code the program, then you test the program, then you need to create the documentation for the users, and then simply put it on production and maintain the program, right? So the phase 1 is the requirement analysis phase. So what you should do typically as a developer, what we do is that we reach out to the business partners of the organization. Then we ask them about uh, the aspects, the properties, the attributes of the program that they want us to develop. I mean, there can be interview for the users as well, but mostly when you do professional development as a part of an enterprise, you would normally reach out to the business analyst. They will interface between you and the end users or the client. Okay, so two types of requirement documentation is created. Number one is simple, it's a raw, just a requirement document, and number two is the use case definition. So the requirement document can be like these type of um, naming convention. So it starts with the date submitted, application title, purpose, program procedures. But when we work as a part of organizations, there is an increasing tendency that we are going away from a lot of documentation. You know, so instead of this type of formal document, you may see it in a different format. It doesn't matter. It should point out what you need on the application. So then is the in that phase we gather the algorithms, processing and conditions as a part of the requirement document. So in our case, the requirements where the user should be able to view the choices of for a pumpkin spice and mocha latte until they select the latte types. When the end user chooses a latte type, the picture of the selected type should be displayed on the window. Only one picture should be displayed at a time. So if a user chooses pumpkin spice latte, only the picture of the pumpkin pie spice latte should be displayed. If the user chooses, on the other hand, the mocha, the picture should be displayed. The mocha should be displayed instead of pumpkin spice. It's very clear. So the next step is when the user makes a latte selection, a confirming message should be displayed. In addition, the user should be prevented from identifying the latte flavor after making the selection. There is no point, right? After the user makes a latte selection, the only allowable selection is to exit the window. So there can be constraints, right? The user should be able to make latte selection only after choosing a latte type. So they cannot just be able to click on the select button and select nothing. Okay? So that's one of the requirements. And then the picture should be shown in the window should be selected from pictures available on the web. Now comes the use case. The use case is a sequence of actions the user will perform when using the program. The use case definition specifies each of these sequences by describing what the user will do and how the program will respond. So use case definition, like you can do, number one use case is user clicks pumpkin spice or mocha button. Program displays a picture of the latte chosen by the user and enables the latte selection button. So all verbs, you can see user cases are all verbs. So then user clicks the latte flavor buttons to view the flavors of latte as desired. User clicks the select latte button. Program displays a latte selection confirmation message, and then user exits the program. So everything that the user does with the system or following by some user's action, whatever your infrastructure the program does, that is included in the use case definition. The use cases are much easier to process because you can create a task right from the use case itself. So the phase 2 is the design of the user interface. So developers sometimes spend a lot of time, 40% up to 40% time on the user interface design, the UI or user interface. The Visual Studio is used to create the user interface. Interface designs are often called mockups. So these are the specific for the application that we are developing in this class. So then the principles of user interface design is that the GUI should be easy to use and follow. The users will not be satisfied with the application if the user interface is not easy to use. Four primary means of interacting with the user interface are keyboard, a pointing device such as a mouse, a touch interface, and a voice input. Use the interface Use of the interface should feel natural and normal. Provide the most appropriate object for each requirement. Here, actually, I should mention that the programmer should consider the accessibility requirements. You know, so that is a separate part, but that is a very important part for the UI design. The design, uh, the the next step is once an object is used for particular requirement, then that object should be used for the same requirement throughout the program interface. The objects must be arranged in a sequence in which they are used. The interface should be kept as simple as possible while containing all required functionality. The user interface should be intuitive. So phase 2 is the design the user interface. The application will be presented in a window on the screen. So a Windows Form application using a Windows Form object is the appropriate means for creating the program. The user will review the choices, a pumpkin spice or a mocha latte, and then take a selection. Two pictures must be displayed in the user interface, a pumpkin spice picture and a mocha picture. So next, when the user makes a latte selection by clicking the select latte button, a message must be displayed to confirm the latte selection. After the user makes a latte selection, the only action available to the user is to exit the window. So an exit window button is required. Include simple instructions in the window so that the user is not confused while using the interface. The user interface should include the following items: a Windows Form object that will contain all the other objects, the two picture box objects to um, contain pictures of pumpkin spice and mocha lattes, four button objects, and three level objects. So these are the requirements. So, as a summary, we can say that we have completed the steps to create the GUI mockup for the latte selection program. Many of the required steps are somewhat repetitive. The same technique is used repeatedly to accomplish similar tasks. So, when you are proficient with these techniques, and other principles of UI design, you will be able to design user interface for a variety of programs. So we should stop now. We will go to the next phase in the next lecture. Okay, thank you. And as always, do send me your feedback or your comments by sending me messages using the canvas or email. I'll be happy to solve your issues. So, yeah, so go over it, try to learn as much as possible, and we will see in the next section how we can carry this design into the next phase. Okay, thank you.